Hi, I'm Pat Higney.
I'm Richard Brenner.
And this is your next door neighbor. And this week, spirits, guides, universal energies, entities. Is IKEA available in the afterlife? We've got somebody interesting who might have answers for you.
Her name is Sarah Goff, and let me tell you a little about Sarah. Sarah started working for me about 18 years ago, and about the third day into her working for me, I said to her, "Are you visiting from another planet?" And she started laughing. And as it turns out, and you'll see through this interview, that Sarah is clairvoyant, and she sees spirits and energies and
deceased family members, and helps to clear people from obstacles.
And that's really the incredible part of what she has to offer. She really is helping people. And so we're going to talk with her and share her journey and how she got to where she is today. And it's a fascinating thing to listen to.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun
It
to
really
listen
was.
to her. Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So join us.
Hello, my name is Sarah Goff.
And where were you born?
I was born in New Hampshire,
What city?
Peterborough, New Hampshire.
And are your parents from there?
My father's from New Jersey, but my mother was from northern New Hampshire, Littleton.
And you lived there your whole life?
18 years.
Wow. And your father came from New Jersey?
Yeah.
So how did he meet your mom there?
He met my mom in 4th grade over a bookcase in the library that fell over, and he helped her pick it up.
Did he push it?
He didn't. That's a good question.
And they were like, that was it.
Instant buddies. Yeah, he asked her to the dance in 6th grade, and she said no. And then eventually they started dating.
And do you have any siblings?
I do. I have one older sister, and she still lives back there, 20 minutes away from my folks.
So you grew up in, what town is that?
Antrim, New Hampshire. Teeny tiny town.
Close to?
Peterborough, Keene, Concord, right in the middle there.
So as
Not
far
bad.
as you know, you've got a history here in the United States.
Yeah.
Your family.
Yep. New Hampshire, New England, New Jersey, and then Quebec, Canada, and then England, and everywhere in Europe. So I'm a mutt.
Aren't we all?
I started playing music, I started doing musical theater when I was 4 and was on stage till I was 18 in New Hampshire, and then I moved to New York City to pursue an acting career, which then led me to LA a year later.
And what year was that?
1997.
What was it like living in New York?
It was great. Loved it. But I had to work 4 jobs, 7 days a week, 5 nights a week. It was tough to make a living as an 18-year-old with no credit. Well, I grew up in New Hampshire, like we said, and I went to a Christian school, really small community school, Christian Community Academy, actually, was what it was called. And it was great. Unlike many other kids who grew up in a religious family, I actually enjoyed it and had a great relationship with spirit, or what have you, God, Jesus, whatever you want to call it. And I was 9 years old, and we had this game we would play in the playground. One of my girlfriends would bring me somebody I didn't know, and they'd sit them in front of me, and I would just hold their hands and tell them everything that's happened and what's going to happen and why mom and dad did this because this is going to happen. And I just...
An imaginary friend
stuff.
or a real friend?
No, real friends.
And you were like sort of quasi famous for this amongst your peers
No,
at the time?
I
Or
wouldn't say it was
Why did they bring them to you?
I wouldn't say it was a famous thing. It was a game. It was something that I thought everybody did, and it was just fun. So my friend specifically, her name was Naomi. We're still friends today. And she would just be like, "You should talk to Sarah." And she would bring him over and sit him down in front of me, and I would just say a prayer and there it went. And one day a teacher came over and asked me what I was doing, and I said, well, I'm talking to the angels. And she said, no, you're talking to Satan. And that was pretty much the end of that.
Wow. So, well, yeah, that's like, there's so many instances of that happening in people's lives. So when she said that to you, you just thought,
oh, I was terrified. I was like, wow, I'm, hearing and seeing these things. And I was, again, raised in a Christian home, so there were prayer meetings my whole life. I grew up around that. And I remember being 3 years old and watching my mom laying hands on someone and praying over them and watching like a dust cloud fly out of their head. And I just thought everybody saw it. I just didn't think, you're a kid. You don't think, well, did anybody else see that? You're just like, yeah, everybody sees it, right? It's not.
So did you have an open communication with your mom about seeing this, or?
I did. And it wasn't like, Mom, did you see the dust cloud fall out of Joe's head? It was just an acknowledgement that God was good and there was grace to be shared and there's power in prayer and all those beautiful things. But as far as going into detail about what I saw or heard when I was a kid, no, I pretty much hid in my closet. I had a really big walk-in closet and I used to go hide.
So when the teacher said that to you, you stopped vocalizing this, but you still were continuing to see stuff and still feel stuff.
Yeah, and that's when I really started to get into drugs. I was only 11 when I started abusing drugs, and that went on till I was about 15 when I attempted suicide and then ended up in the hospital. It's really common with intuitives, with healers, that we're drawn, if we're not allowed to express ourselves and work with the energy that's running through us, it's really common that healers will run to alcohol and drugs to just tamper out what's coming through, because it's hard to communicate if you don't have the tools.
Well, let's go back to, you started drugs at 11.
Mm-hmm.
So what propelled you to that? Was it just the frustration that you couldn't communicate what you were?
It was the frustration. I was also violated in a way that I couldn't be heard because I was in a Christian home. Therapy was not allowed. So I tried to go to my mom, actually. I was having really bad nightmares, and I went to the school therapist. God bless those school counselors. And
seriously?
Oh yeah.
Why is that?
Well, because if you don't have a voice in your home,
right.
I hope these kids have a voice somewhere else, even if it's in a school, public school, which I was in at that time. I went to and the school counselor said, you should see this therapist, and gave me a card. And I went to my mother and I said, I need some help. And she said I should see this lady. And she said, no, we don't talk to people outside the home. You can talk to me or God. And I went, well, I can't talk to you. And that's pretty much when I started shutting down.
Talk to God. And even though you saw spirits or saw, I don't want to say they're spirits, but whatever you were seeing, you didn't feel that communicating with God was an alternative? Your mom said me or God. Again,
I didn't have the tools. I had nobody to tell me that, yes, this is great. You have a really great relationship with your God, and keep working on that and keep nurturing it.
Well, it certainly can be hard to understand God's answer sometimes when you're asking questions. So,
well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
creative.
So you were doing drugs in junior high school?
Yeah, and then I can't believe I'm saying all this right now. But hey, you're you, so I'll be candid. I got busted for selling LSD. And a court order to go get therapy, which was amazing. Again, a creative God, a creative universe we live in. So I started getting therapy and started going to Narcotics Anonymous and getting the help I needed. And then I straightened out and made it on honor roll and graduated with honors from my high school.
Graduated high school.
Yeah.
And do you attribute that to anybody in particular that might have helped you through that therapy? Is there somebody that stood out?
There were so many.
Were there answers that helped you move forward?
Mostly it was the school counselors, school teachers that stepped forward and saw that I was struggling and just gave me encouragement. Because that's really encouragement, acceptance, love, and just an ear, somebody to listen is so big for kids because they don't really have the language. It's not like you go into school and there's a self-love class and here's your spirituality class and there's, you're not really equipped.
So you said that you attempted suicide.
Yeah, and just couldn't talk about anything in my household at that point. Thankfully, Naomi was sleeping over on the night that I took an overdose of pills that I had collected from the house. And I had taken them when she was out of the room, and I started getting really violently sick in the middle of the night, and I was in massive pain, and she woke my sister up, and that's when we went to the hospital, and I made it, and I was fine. But it was a wake-up call for everyone, and thankfully got the help that I needed. Therapy is awesome, and so I can attribute a lot of help to therapists that I stayed with for the next few years. I don't think I really talked to them about my gifts because still I didn't quite know where to put them. I started to notice that not everybody saw what I saw, and I didn't want to alienate myself anymore from not being heard or seen. So I just stuck to performing and the norm.
These images, what you saw, did they scare you? I mean, put aside the Satan part. Did they scare you in themselves?
It's a great question. I don't remember it ever scaring me. When I was using drugs, it scared me a couple times because I knew things were... When we use drugs, we blow our auric field out, our vibration out, and we become available to whatever energy wants to come dance with us. And it can really be a dangerous, vulnerable place to be if you don't have people around you to help you cope with it. So those would be the moments that I knew I was in a fearful, not so good place. But darker energies definitely have, I wouldn't call it fear for me now, but it's like when you walk into a room and you meet somebody who's really angry, you just know they're really angry and they got some stuff, right? It's the same with spirit. If a spirit comes in and it doesn't feel so good, I just know that we need to do some work.
And how did you know that what you were seeing were, in your child's language, put as angels instead of devils? How did you know?
Also a great
and
question.
Attribute it to good?
Because when I'm in the presence of spirit, and I'm just going to say Christ energy because that's what I was specifically working with as a child, it was very peaceful. I can't describe it. It's a very calming, like when you meditate for a while and you just get to that really peaceful place, that's how it feels. It's just really tranquil and loving. You feel loved.
So after the attempt, was that the first time you felt you had died?
No, I don't.
You said you.
Yeah, I've had a couple near death.
So you got through that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you turned your high school career around, right?
Yeah. Turn my poison into medicine. That's what it's all about.
Okay, so you graduate high school.
Mm-hmm. And I get kicked out of my house 2 weeks after, which was great. Come home and you find everything on the front lawn. That was cool.
And why were you kicked out?
Well, that's a
She,
very good question. Sure, the answer to this.
my mother thought I had lied about where I had slept the night before, and I hadn't lied about it. So, but again, it was just spirit moving me on my journey. And sometimes it moves you in not such a peaceful way. Sometimes it goes kick. And so I then started figuring it out and realized I wanted to go to Boston Conservatory because they had singing, acting, and dancing degrees. And I had no money and no folks to help me with school. So I decided to hit up mentors and teachers that I had done shows with over the years. And by this point, I was being paid to do theater in New Hampshire. And so I had great folks
You were
around
paid
me.
to do theater.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I was actually getting
Money for your gig.
money for my gig.
Acting gigs.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was great. And choreographing. I was a really busy choreographer at the time. And I went around and got all these recommendation forms, and one of the directors said, no, you're coming to New York City and you're going to go out for TV and film. And I went, okay. And so I left 2 weeks later to live in New York City. And yeah, I moved 11 times in 1 year. Just sublet to sublet, carried everything I owned. And it was great. I booked my 3rd and 4th acting gig, and that helped me navigate the next year. And then I never booked anything again. It was great. Until I moved to LA.
Okay, so how did you get from New York to LA?
Well, I was engaged to be married to a man in the Marines, and he was in Hawaii. So that plane ticket, once I called the marriage off, got me to LA. And right before I did that, I landed in Salt Lake City, Utah, where I hitchhiked up to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and hung out with friends and had a blast, and then hitchhiked back to Salt Lake, and then continued on to LA and started my life. They lost my luggage, and it was a really weird time.
So how'd you get your first job? You got a job as a nanny?
Yeah, luckily I just had friends who had friends here, and they were kind enough to share their contacts with me, and people trusted me with their kids right away. I didn't start singing rock music until I got to LA, and it was immediate. The first job I took, I lived in a walk-in closet over on Beechwood Canyon, and with an old man who had emphysema and was on all these test drugs. He'd wake up in the middle of the night screaming at things. It was great. And I'd have to go in and take him down off this bad trip. It was like they were just showing me the work I'd be doing. And I took my first nanny job for a woman who was doing the costuming for Shania Twain. And so I got to go to this great soundstage, and I heard Janis Joplin singing, and I'm a huge Janis Joplin fan. But it really sounded like Janis Joplin was singing in the next room. And out walks Melissa Etheridge. And I'm sitting here holding this infant child for the costumer of Shania Twain, who's in the next room, and I'm just like, and I had just seen Melissa Etheridge at Great Woods in Massachusetts 2 months before. And she's eye-goggling the baby and playing with the baby, and I'm just like, hi, you sound amazing. She's like, oh, just singing some old chick songs. And I was like, what? And she leaves. I go back to my closet in Hollywood, and I get a phone call from a girlfriend in New York, an actress there. She goes, Sarah, you got to go out for this Paramount film. They need a young Janis Joplin, and Melissa Etheridge is playing the older one. And I was like, stop it. This is an hour after I just met Melissa. It was hilarious. So I'm thinking the heavens have opened, and this is my destiny, and blah, blah. Yeah, no, not so much. I spent the next year studying Janis, training my voice, how to sing like her, went to San Francisco, did the whole 9 yards, method, and then bombed the audition. I mean, was the worst audition I ever gave in my life. But
did you know that while it
got
was
me
going
singing.
on?
Oh yeah, it was awful. I'm so sorry, Deb Aquila. I'm so sorry. And I then went to a party a few months later, a Halloween party, and I dressed up like Janice and was like, I gotta get this out of my system. Someone was playing piano, and I just walked up and started improvising, because that's what I'm really good at, is, well, I channel. So I just started channeling lyrics. And the guy stops playing piano and goes, hey, you want to sing for my band? And I went, sure. And the next day I came home and there were 4 guys sitting on my doorstep. And I started writing. We called ourselves Glabrous. It's German for tongue.
Now, during that period, I don't know what the correct word is. I'm going to say visions. Were you dealing
During
with those
that
guys? And
period, well, I was channeling when I was singing, and I knew something was happening, but I wasn't entirely sure. And then I was having pain in my abdominal area, and so I went to the doctor, and it turned out I had really early stage cervical cancer. And the doctor was like, you have to quit smoking, because I was a smoker at the time. You have to, fix your lifestyle and get it together and come back in 3 months, and we'll figure out if this is fast moving or if it's just here and we need to watch it. And I said, okay. And I went home and I just decided I wasn't going to go out like that. I was 21 years old. I wasn't about to die from cervical cancer at 21. So I found a workshop on, remember that magazine in LA, The Annex?
Yeah,
Remember
sure.
they had all those great classes?
Yeah, sure.
And Doreen Virtue, this teacher, she speaks to angels specifically. She doesn't do the work anymore, but at the time she did. And I took a workshop with her, and it just brought me back. And I got a Tibetan singing bowl, and I just made it a practice to meditate morning and night and start to build my relationship with spirit. And I went back to the doctor, and they couldn't find anything. So.
And do you attribute that to the doctors? Do you attribute that to your work and the doctors, or do you attribute it to your work?
Great question. I attribute it to all of it. I think Western medicine has a great place in the world. It's needed. I have personally been on chemo, and it helped me tremendously. So it's got its place. But it was an advocate to get me back into my practice and to get me connected with my God. It was spirit saying, come on, you gotta stay on your path. I was really going off. I was drinking way too much, and that didn't stop for the next 10 years because I kept singing in rock bands. so that kept up. It wasn't until around 33 that I started to realize I really needed to change my lifestyle dramatically. I kept up the meditation the best I could, and at 33 I started practicing Nichiren Buddhism, which is chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which is the Gohonzon right there. And that's when I was finally able to start to have really big breaks around my depression that I had always fought, and realizing that my depression was always me hating myself for not speaking up as a child and saying, I need help, and I'm sorry that you don't want me to go anywhere else, but I have to. Those voices being taken care of. I didn't take care of myself. I didn't know how. And I really punished myself for that. So I needed to start that healing. And grateful for it. And then I got married, kept up a rock band still. And that rock band was great. I did 5 records with the Elizabeth Kill. Named it after my great-great-grandmother. And
who is she?
She was actually a nurse in England, Wales, and did house visits. And there's a plaque in a church in Wales saying thank you to. Well, she changed her name, and prepare yourself. Betty Head. She changed her name to Betty Head. She married Jeremiah Head, and at the time I was married to a Jeremiah, so it was really great, and seemed like the right name. And she had good medicine for her community, which at the time I didn't realize I was going to be going into a shamanic practice. It hadn't even crossed my mind. I had always...
I'm sorry, what kind of practice?
Shamanism.
Okay.
Shamanic.
Okay.
And I had actually been doing sweat lodges with an Oxnard tribe, a Lakota tribe up in Oxnard for all these years, probably the past 12 years I've been sweating with them, and pipe ceremonies and what have you, just different circles. Started doing Kundalini yoga and studying different modalities, and again, keeping up my meditation practice.
Do you think your grandmother also was a shaman?
Well, I think everyone has it in them.
Right.
I think it's if we choose to access it or not. I think absolutely. She was choosing to go house to house and nurse people and try and activate healing in people. Then that's.
So do you think you chose your practice, or did it choose you? Because it seems to me like no matter what was going on in your life, you still had a bit of a foot somewhere in your practice.
It's true. Yeah.
So it wouldn't let you go.
No, it chooses you. You don't get away from your path, without it really. Well, you're gonna basically, like I did, die. Unless you really pay attention to it. So it chose me. And then my community chose me. Now I get to work with the community, and it's all word of mouth. People who need me find me. And I just trust that that's the right way to go about it.
And what would people need you for?
So when you go to the doctor and you have aches and pains and the doctor can't give you anything that helps, it's probably an energetic imbalance, and you can come to me and we'll figure it out. I was just focusing on the music and just making my living waitressing, and I was working on myself, but I wasn't getting as deep as I needed to. And so I got really sick, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. It was about 9 months of pain, and I couldn't figure out what was happening. And the doctor I was going to just kept giving me drugs that I was having violent reactions to because I was allergic to most of them. And then it became impossible for me to work. I started bleeding internally. It was on the hour. And if you've ever waited tables, you know that's not really cohesive to slinging plates. So
Serving food, no.
no, not so good. So I left, and it was abrupt, and I just had to be like, I'm sorry, I have to go and figure out what's happening. I think I'm dying. This is terrible. And I laid in bed for the next 17 weeks and bled out. And the doctor eventually actually said to me, I don't know what to tell you. I've given you everything I can. You're screwed.
And what was your reaction to that?
I hung up the phone.
Yeah, that requires some life-saving attitude.
Yep. I hung up the phone and I laid in my bed and cried because at this point I was sleeping on the floor of my bathroom. I was barely eating because everything was going straight through me. And I just laid there and I started praying, and I said, I heard a voice say, you can either lay here and die or you can claim your miracle. And I chose the latter, obviously. And I got up and made it to the computer, and I just called on every circle I've prayed with in the past 20 years. And just people started showing up at my door with nutritional supplements, with doctors they thought would help me, with acupuncturists, with food, with comfort, with love, with compassion. It was amazing. And I found a great doctor, and my mother flew out here at the time, which was really healing for us and great. And
were you able to talk to her about these?
I still didn't really go into it. I would lightly, and she always knew it was happening for me. Right. And she did wake me up in the morning when I was 7 at like 2 a.m. and said, God has a message for you. I have to tell you what the meaning of your life is. And I was like, what? I'm like 2 a.m. I'm 7. And she takes me to the kitchen. She grabs a sponge and she turns on the faucet and she goes, you're this sponge and you soak up this water and then you go over here and you give it to people. So you have to be really careful that your water is clean.
Don't you think she was seeing things too?
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that she had something.
Huge.
But so then,
And we'll get there because that's
Sigmund
part of the
Freud
story.
I think Sigmund Freud said, a mother that fails is a successful mother.
okay. So,
Well, I don't know. Take it for what it is. Yeah. Okay. Onward.
okay.
Yes, well, she did, but she was hushed and
Right.
she was
repressed.
so repressed.
Right.
But I am so grateful for her for sharing that with me as a child. So grateful. So she comes out and she helps me, and we go to this doctor, Dr. Richard Krupp, over here in Burbank. He works at St. Joe's Medical Center.
And what does he do?
He's a general practitioner, just general practitioner, because we still didn't know what was killing me. We still didn't know. We weren't referring to it as, wow, you're dying, but I'm bleeding out every 5 to 20 minutes. It was pretty bad. Why I didn't just go to the hospital, I'm not sure, but I think we just...
Yeah, why weren't you just...
I mean, we had gone to the ER to Sherman Oaks several times, and they just kept giving me fluids and potassium and saying, here you go. All right, bye. And that was it. So I wasn't getting the help I needed. Again. And so she gets here. She typed out everything we had gone through, all the medications, because I was having a really hard time speaking now. My whole body had gone into atrophy, and I was really exhausted if I tried to talk. So she typed it all out, and I just handed it to Dr. Krupp when he came into the room. He read it and went, okay, so we're going to admit you into the hospital tonight or tomorrow morning if you want to wait, because he didn't want to panic us. And I chose for the next morning because I was far out. I mean, I was far out. And dealing with tremendous pain, which then we discovered the next morning is when I died. So the next morning we get to the hospital, and I'm laying in this hospital bed, and they just barely have put me on fluids because they don't know what's wrong with me yet. So they're testing me. They're doing all these tests. And I'm laying there, and my husband at the time is sleeping on the couch. So it's the first morning in the hospital, and I'm asleep, and I'm meditating again because I was in a constant state of prayer and meditation. Guru Tej had given me mudras to run through and meditations to run through to help me get through this. I mean, I had all kinds of help. And all of a sudden, I just feel myself being pulled. And it was as if I'm getting pulled out of my body, like from behind, and it's like this, and I just start going through this tunnel backwards. And it's almost like a huge high school tunnel, and there's doors with windows on behind those doors, and you can see lights behind those doors. I mean, it was, yeah. And I go through, and then all of a sudden it turns to more of a light tunnel, and then I was just in complete white. Everything was just the densest, most beautiful white light, and I was no longer my body. I was actually particles, and I was everywhere. I could see in the parking lot of the hospital. I could see in the hallway of the hospital. I could see through my friend's eyes in his music studio. I could see in the hospital room. I was everywhere at the same time, and it wasn't scary. It wasn't hard. There was nothing stressful. It was total bliss. I was out of pain. I was just everywhere. And I started laughing. And now this next part, there's no words in English that can really describe what I experienced. It's just a different language. It's more a vibration. That is how I communicated over there. I started
Did
vibrating.
you think that at that moment maybe you were a vibration?
Oh, yeah. I knew I was. It wasn't a question. I was energy. And I started laughing, so just going, and these are split seconds. I mean, thoughts are like boom, boom, boom. It's just fast, 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 fast. And I said, oh, that's it? I thought I had so much more to do. That was like literally my first thought. Because I knew I'd crossed. I knew I was done. Oh, okay, it's over. And I was elated. I mean, you can't not be elated. It is just bliss. There's no actual word because it's better than bliss. It's way better than bliss. Way better than any drug I ever tried. It's just far out awesome. And then I see my life, and it looks like it's in this tiny little plastic IKEA box with drawers. You know, those little... And it's teeny tiny. Just this tiny little thing. And I looked down through it and knew my whole life like that, and why every single challenge that had happened in my life happened. All of the trying things turned me back onto my path. It actually got me back onto my path. Every challenge was actually to help me line up with what I was supposed to do here. So interesting. And I knew I could open any of those drawers and review that part of my life if I wanted to, but I was like, no, it's so minute. My life was so teeny tiny, like I didn't get really anything accomplished that I'm here to accomplish yet. Interesting. And then I started getting just rapid knowings. Like now, intuitives, healers, they call it downloads in the New Age community. Different things. One teacher I work with calls it a mail slot, like ideas just flood in and you just suddenly have knowings. But I had these knowings all of a sudden that the world, imagine a tapestry around the world, and there's no seams, and pull down this little thread and there's you, and pull down this little thread and there's you. And you have this connection still to this tapestry. You're still totally connected. But you came in to have this individual experience so that it could be simplified, so that you didn't know everything, so that you could exercise and play. And then I heard, you need to go back and tell them all they are taking it way too seriously. This is a playground. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I just made an acknowledgement. It wasn't fear. Again, there was no fear or anxiety. It was just an acknowledgement that the soul I was leaving behind, my partner at the time, and it wasn't my partner. Like, it was weird. It was like a energy. Again, then you start seeing everything as energy. You start seeing it all as energy. And the partner at the time had just lost his father and was in a lot of pain and anguish. And I just knew that that soul was never going to find their connection to God if I left. And it wasn't me. It wasn't I. It was that soul needs help. And I don't know that this energy leaving that soul will help that soul find God. And then this huge wave of peace just came over me, and I started to feel like I was coming back into my body, but I'm still in the white light. And it was just this tremendous peace. And that peace stayed with me the next 6 months, solidly, just stayed with me. But the peace came over me, and they reminded me, no, you're going back, and you're going to remind people that this is a playground. Stop taking it so seriously. Okay. And that was it. I started going back through the tunnel, through the hallway, saw 2 little dark holes, came up into it, and there I am in the hospital bed. I looked over, and there's still my husband sleeping. And about an hour later, they found the infection that was burning me alive and started treating me right away, and took me 2.5 weeks to recover. And through those 2.5 weeks, I had different entities, angels, all kinds of beautiful spirits come and visit me every night and just shine healing light on me. It was amazing.
What kind of infection was it?
It was called C. difficile. It was an overgrowth of bad bacteria in my intestines. It was a 5-minute test that doctor who told I was screwed could have done. I have a little anger still. But it's because starving to death for 17 weeks while you're being burned alive on the inside is pretty painful.
And the playground, I see this as a theme. Because you talked about the playground.
Yes, isn't it funny?
And did you get that too?
Oh yeah, I've connected it now. Now I've connected it, but it took me all these years to connect it. Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful, beautiful loop back, isn't it? So, yeah. It took me 8 months to learn how to walk again and get back up on my feet. And I did all the training at home. It was really challenging. You know, my husband at the time had to carry me up and down the stairs. It was rough. And I still have, like, my hip, I think some of my cartilage is lost from it. But regardless, it's I'm in fantastic shape for 4 years later and recovering from that. It's pretty remarkable. A year later, my heart tried to give out because I didn't come right into the work. I was waking up in the morning to angel voices and I was communicating with it, but I couldn't shut it off. It was constant. Like, I couldn't go to the grocery store without hearing somebody's uncle talk to me or whatever. And past relatives or just angels saying, you know, put love on this person and whatever. It was overwhelming. So I found a teacher over here, Abby O'Neill. She is a Nova Light worker, and she started to teach me how to turn it on and off so that I could get some sleep. And so I started doing that work, but very lightly, just to help me cope.
So when you say you hear, how does that manifest itself? I mean, is it music? Is it?
It's different.
Voices? Is it? Yeah.
It's in the beginning, like angel voices literally sound like angel voices. Like you hear the choirs, you know, with many high-pitched voices. Like, I'm not kidding. It actually sounds like that. The first morning, like, we were really worried that we weren't going to be able to pay our rent because I hadn't been able to work in 2-3 months by this point. And I was waiting for my disability to come through, and it was getting to the breaking point. And I woke up one morning to, like, it's hard to describe, like these really high, beautiful voices going, good news coming today, good news coming today. And they were like overlapping themselves and harmonious and just beautiful. And I saw doors opening, and I just went, okay. And then the door flies open to the bedroom, and my husband runs in and goes, you got your disability check. We're going to make the rent. And I went, oh, there's the good news. So after a year, it was I went in for a routine checkup, and my heart gave out, and they had to bring me back with adrenaline.
And did you have the same experience that you had the first time?
No, but I thought for sure they were going to take me this time. They missed the first time, so I thought I didn't remind anybody that this was a playground, so I figured they were going to take me this time. So they brought me back, and I was fine. I spent, I think, a week and a half that time. And that time is when Abby O'Neill, the woman that I studied with, she came in, and another Reiki practitioner came in, and they just started working on me and said, Sarah, you've got to go into this work. You have got to start answering the call to this. And I was like, okay, well, can I get better first? And I recovered from that, and then I just really submersed myself into the study. And different modalities too. And then I was drawn to a teacher by the name of Alessandro Giannetti. And he teaches over here in Toluca Lake. And I went 2-3 times, and on the third time I'm sitting there and I'm like talking to my guides and angels, and I'm going, this is great, but I don't really know why you're bringing me here over and over again. And Alessandro stops talking and takes a good 20-second pause, which is awkward in a room of like 50 people. And he goes, hang on. I'm being told I have to open this up to the room, so I am. And that is, I'm looking for teachers who are drawn to teach healing work. I'm opening a school called Guided Light Healing. If you're drawn to be a teacher in this modality, please email me or speak to me after class. And I went, oh, thanks. And that's when I started studying with Al, and have been studying with him for 2 years now, and started teaching for him a year and a half ago. Started taking clients almost 2 years ago, and just taking clients on the weekends because I was working full time.
And so, what do clients come to you with? What if they've got an
Good question.
issue? What?
A lot of listen. The biggest epidemic is thinking.
Explain.
So, we are energy conductors. Just play with me for a minute here. You're an energy conductor. You conduct energy. So energy is always running through you all day long. You're having different feelings. You're feeling different things when you walk by someone, or walk into a room. You feel different things, right? These feelings want to be realized, so they turn into emotion. And what does emotion want to do? It wants to emote. So what does emoting do? It wants to put a thought to that emotion so that it has a story and a reality and a purpose. But if energy is running through me, I can choose to say, wow, energy is running through me right now, and I'm going to choose to just chill and enjoy this. Or I'm going to say, energy's running through me and I'm going to die! And that is the epidemic of thought.
Energy's running through me, I'm going to die?
Like,
I agree to stop thinking right now.
it's a good idea. It's a really good idea. This is why meditation is so great, because it slows down our thinking. We choose what we want to think about. I can choose to think about this energy as a beautiful thing and work with it, or I can choose to be afraid of it. It goes both ways. And it's like that with all thought. I can choose to sit down in a meeting and be angry that this person's not hearing me, or I can choose to sit down at that meeting and realize that the person's not hearing me because they're not hearing themselves, and I just have to be patient and wait for them to be finished hearing themselves. So thought. It's always trying to narrate our life, and it's running people into rabbit holes that are getting them sick, that are getting them in fear-based relationships with themselves and other people. So that's pretty much where I start. I heard this great story about a shaman who was long waiting lists to get in to see him. And this journalist was doing a write-up on shamanism. So he wanted to go see this guy. Waits 3 months to go in. Walks through the door. The shaman goes, "You, stop thinking. Anytime a negative thought starts, stop it. And turn it into something good. Go. Come back when you figure it out." And that was it. The guy was like, huh? Wait. I waited 3 months for that? But it's true. We get into these negative thought patterns from maybe what my mom and dad thought about money and that there was lack of. So now I've grown up thinking that there's always lack, right? But it's not true. It's actually not true. And once we give ourselves that permission to believe it's not true, and we can choose a different thought that might be joy-filled, our life can just turn around.
So, and do you receive energies from your clients?
Oh yeah. When people walk through the door, specifically of their physical ailments, we would call that remote viewing. I don't do it too often because I don't like being in someone else's energy for too long. It just feels kind of icky, especially if they're in pain. But I will get like pokes if there's something going on with the person specifically, and I'll be like, "Does your shoulder hurt?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, my shoulder has just not been right." And I'll just get that hit right away. But first things first is I always ask people to give me permission to speak with their guides and angels and their source, because that's how I get the information. Because my angels and guides and God communicate with your people. They communicate and then give me the what's up on how to help you navigate through whatever you're going through. And it comes in different forms. I work in divination work, so I work with my stones. I work with angel cards and ruins. And then I do extraction work, soul retrieval, Reiki, and other healing light modalities, working with like conducting light. And I don't control light. I'm an observer of light. And we basically ask for this flow of energy to go through someone.
And what is soul retrieval?
So this is you. And you're moving through life, okay? And this, you get into a car accident. And part of that trauma, part of your soul, just stayed with that car accident. And you keep going on with life. But you've never been the same since. I put you into a medicine wheel in my work, in my practice. Different folks do it differently. But this is how I've been taught to do it by my guides and my teachers. So I put you in a medicine wheel, and I hold space for you, and I go into a trance state, and I go back, and I help bring it back to you so that you can be whole.
Let's substitute the word entity for the word energy.
Okay.
Is energy an entity? And can an entity attach itself to you because it in some way finds you attractive? Does it work? The energies have thought, the energies have intention, or?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we're all in trouble.
No. If you live in a constant state of fear, then yeah, you probably have something on you. But negative thinking is its own negative energy. So we could literally call that an entity. It's a negative energy. It can literally become this like awful life-sucking thing because you're negative thinking all the time. So it's broad, but there are many different paths down that question.
Do spirits search you out? Do they try and speak to you?
Yeah, they used to a lot more than now because I do it full time now. I find that I get a lot more quiet time, which is nice.
What do you mean by that?
So after my first NDE, I would literally be falling asleep at night and someone would be like, "Hey, you see me? Hey, you see me?" And it was like, "Ah! Okay, really guys, like business hours." And I had to actually give spirit business hours. It's actually something I now teach my students. Give yourself business hours. This is when you're open. Or if a spirit really needs help, like there's earthbound spirits that are still looking for the light, want help crossing over. So if that's the case, I tell them to bring me one of their descendants and I'll be happy to help them. Oftentimes I have clients who come in and I see ancestors around them. I had one woman walk in and she was like, her grandmother was standing in front of her, like just protecting her from everything. And I had to talk to her grandmother and get her calm and in a peaceful state so that she could move out of the way so I could reach her granddaughter. And the granddaughter goes, "I just have such a hard time making friends and people just don't seem to want to be around me." And I'm like, "Oh, your grandmother's terrified of everybody." And so I had to help her grandmother come to a more peaceful agreement on how to protect her granddaughter. So that's the kind of work I do. And also when people are in the medicine wheel, different family members will come in depending on karmic clearing that I do. Different family members come in for healing. They might need healing with that person and it's attached to them. Or that person was literally drawn to me because they knew they had to help heal their family line. It happens a lot. I use tuning forks. I use all kinds of things that help me meter people's energies as well. I'm constantly schooling myself in different modalities because I find it fascinating that all these different modalities, Reiki, Buddhism, all these different Kundalini, all these different ways of thinking are actually all saying the same thing.
Which is?
Like Reiki, for example.
Before we go off onto the Reiki there, I did want to bring up one question. Do your clients consider you clairvoyant or a medium of any? I don't know the difference between the two definitions.
I like to use the word intuitive because I do get clairvoyant. I get a lot of visions, especially if I touch people. And I could be considered a clairvoyant for sure. But I don't like people coming to me just for that, because I'm not going to just be like, oh, you're gonna move in 6 months, and then the person sits back in their life and goes, oh, well, I'm gonna move in 6 months, and then they don't do anything, and then they don't move because they didn't take any action in their life. So I'm not about that. I'm about empowering people to make their path easier and brighter so that they can live a more fulfilled, happy playground life. So Reiki has, we do something called psychic surgery, and it's a way to go into a person's body energetically and pull out illness that is energy that is lodged into your body. So if we have a negative thought of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so sick, I'm going to be so sick, that negative energy goes into wherever you think you're going to be so sick, and you literally manifest it into your body, okay? So we go in and we help pull that energy out, and we send it light and ask for healing and help you deal with your thought process so that you don't manifest this over and over again. In shamanic practices, we have something called extraction work, where we merge with our power animals and we go in and help pull out whatever illness is going on in a person's body or discourse, and help restore balance. Exactly the same technique, except slightly different belief systems on how to get there. Which is how I sort of feel around religion too. I think religion is fantastic, and it has a lot of tools, and everybody has their own connection to source on how to get there. So why wouldn't there be many religions and many beliefs? But if it's not fulfilling you and making you happy and empowering you, then maybe you should check something else out, because the only God I've ever known is a loving, forgiving, merciful God. And I'm psyched I get to work for that. So that's what I say. All these different modalities looking in on the same thing. It's great and comforting at the same time. So yeah, I deal with a lot of different things. People come to me for all kinds of things. I run a relationship workshop on how to bring in the right relationship. There's certain healings that I apply and steps I apply to help people find a great partner. But I first bring that person into harmony with themselves, because we can't show up in a relationship if we don't know who we are.
So you were working, and then you decided that this was going to be your path.
Yeah.
That's a huge step for people.
Yeah.
It's a huge step.
Yeah.
So what made you decide that?
Well, quite a few things. My teacher at the time had told me, it's time for you to do this full time. And I was like, you're crazy. I was on chemotherapy still to recover from what had turned out to be a chronic illness, and I just couldn't imagine making a living at this, because half the time I just want to do it for nothing. It's awesome to be able to help people. So I had some conflicts I had to figure out, but what eventually happened was I was meditating, and one of my spirit guides told me, listen, we need you to do this work. If you're not going to do it, then we'll start pulling resources. And I was stunned.
That's threatening.
I was like, well, it wasn't fearful. It wasn't mean. It was just like, we have to keep moving. If you're not going to help people, then we need to find somebody who's going to help people. And I just was, so I went to my teacher and I said, this is what I heard. And is that real? And he laughed and he went, yeah, that's what they told me 10 years ago. And then I quit my job too. And I went, okay. And then he, explained, yeah, they need us here. So if we're not going to do the work, they're going to find somebody who will.
Then for somebody like me, and maybe other people who are going to be listening to this, I don't believe there's a God.
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying that there's a spirit world.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a God world, or how does that exist in your mind?
In my mind,
Yes.
I believe there is God consciousness. It runs through everything. All of us, each of us, are connected to it. God is a really small word for how expansive it is. Source is limitless. It goes through universes. It's huge. So I'm not sure I can give you the best answer on that, only because I'm limited as well, because I'm human.
Right.
I can only go from what I've seen and what I've heard and what I feel, and that is that this energy, be it God, source, what have you, God consciousness, or just a consciousness, just an energy, is very alive to me and in my life. I gotta trust it. I work for it. So someone who doesn't believe, that's fine. It doesn't mean that you can't sit in meditation and connect with yourself. It doesn't mean that you don't have an energy within you that you have to nurture.
No, I mean, I don't believe that there's a big guy up there with a beard.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't believe that.
I think that what you're talking about, I find it very plausible.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about energy,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it gets pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's deep. It's not like a 2-second conversation, for sure. It goes way deep. And it's different for everybody because we're all different pieces of this connection. But peace of mind and encouragement are definitely the two things I try to bring to my students and my clients, 100%. If I'm not doing that, then I'm not doing my job. And they're really quick to keep me in line all the time. I'm always having to practice what I preach. I live a very healthy lifestyle now, very different from my rock star life. And I don't drink, I eat vegan, all this is to help support my body so I can stay healthy and do the work the best I can, and also stay very clean because I have people walking in all the time with physical challenges and I have to be really strong to clear it for them. And again, let me just say this, and that is I am not doing anything actually. It's spirit, it's energy, it's source. I like to tell my clients that 50% is up to whoever you signed up with, whatever energy, source, God you signed up with. 40% is up to you, and 10% is up to me.
Well, it's like corporate though. It's like you hope you get some good spiritual guides.
Yes, yes.
You through it. So there should be a percentage in there, assuming that everybody's spiritual guide is maybe a few different spirits, right? There should be something in there for them.
Well, that's a whole other interview.
Well, speaking for myself and maybe perhaps Rich, we're totally excited to find out what it was that you do,
Yeah.
and how it is that you help people, and we wish you the best of luck in the future with everything that comes to you.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank
Tell me your story. Tell me where you come from, Yeah, ta 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 ta. Tell me who you loved. Tell me